Welcome to Author Talk at CBS News. I'm Jeff Glor, joined today by Stephanie LaCava, author of An Extraordinary Theory of Objects, a memoir of an outsider in Paris. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you.
You open the book with a great line. I was always strange, you say, and we kind of proceed from there. You found comfort in that strangeness with ordinary objects. When did you figure that out?
It's funny, to be perfectly honest, I didn't really figure it out until maybe like a year ago when I realized that someone was telling me and they said, oh, Steph, she's great, she's just a little bit strange. And then someone else said the same thing too, and I just started to think about it, and I was like, because you never consider yourself, that's all you know. So to me, it's very ordinary. And I was like, oh, maybe that's the answer. And it's not even a joke. It just came together like that in my head after enough people started to say that. You start to listen about anything. You listen to feedback, and you're like, oh, maybe no one else has the same thing going on in their head.
And you learn to take pride in it.
Well, that's
in all honesty.
You try to do, or you try to find other people like you.
Why do they say that? What do they mean when they say that?
Again, I don't really know because it's to me it's more or less normal, but I think it's probably just a sense of probably a product of having grown up how I did. I was socialized a bit funny. It's like I remember when I first moved back to the States, I asked someone, I was like, are you supposed to look at people when you walk down the hallway in high school, or are you supposed to like turn your head? Like I didn't know normal things like that. I just wasn't comfortable with.
Well, let's talk about the background a little bit, because you grew up here, but then you moved to France when you were 11 years old, just after buying some land in Brazil, which is another aside in the story. That is jarring for any 11-year-old. How did that figure into your development?
I think, again, it's like move is they say one of the top things that's, most traumatic for anyone. So it's no special circumstance. I think everyone, no matter what they have to do or how old they are with their parents or with a loved one, when they have to move, it's very challenging. But I think I was already predisposed to certain things, and that was just kind of a catalyst that happened, so fast and so many different things at once.
But there's a difference between moving to Illinois and moving to Paris.
Totally, but when you're strange, it's like
when you're strange, you're used to strange things. So objects, you knew at that point you were fascinated by objects.
It was really funny. There's a memory, and I talked to my aunt about this, where she got us these piggy banks one year as a present, and I just did not like mine. Like the color, the look, like it sounds so terrible, but it was something much like sort of an innate like discomfort with this thing that I wanted a very specific thing instead of it, which it sounds ridiculous, but I guess if you read the story you'll kind of understand. And I ended up with, I think, a green velour dinosaur instead.
And you're how old at this time?
Like probably 7.
Some of the things some of the objects you deal with in the book: video cassettes, dodo birds, scallop shells, pea pods. Nothing is off limits here.
Nothing.
Anything in particular, when you look back on the book right now, that is a sort of personal favorite? And we should say, by the way, the book is uniquely structured in a strange way, one might say, because sort of interspersed with these essays is these longer than descriptions of the objects that you find fascinating and that provided you comfort. They still do provide you that comfort.
I guess the one important thing is that the objects aren't so literal. There are so many stories where it's like an object appears and then you talk about the actual object. It's more like the objects represent sort of an inquiry into something more than what we see, than the like opaque thing.
It's a vehicle for you.
Exactly, and so like that just leads you into some kind of tangent that distracts your mind.
You also in this book, you apologize to your mother and father because you say the family's always been rather private, and you obviously deal with some issues here. How do they feel about the book?
They've been amazing. I think they always knew. My mother just sent me a poem the other day that I wrote in 2nd grade, and she's like, oh, we always knew that this, that you would be a writer. And I think they're happy with it only because they realize that it's been a way that I've helped myself to find a sort of happiness that eluded me before in figuring out certain things through the process. And I think that's all you want for your child. And throughout the book, I explain it has nothing to do with my family. There's no one in the book, there's nothing bad about anyone except for myself. It's my own personal struggle.
So you always knew what you liked and what you liked in something, at what point did you figure out that the way to sort of process that or deal with it or handle it was to write about it?
I think from very early on, probably because that's just one of the things I had. Sort of like you can have a notebook anywhere, you can write anywhere. It doesn't take anything. And I probably was a product of reading. I read everything. I started reading when I was very, very young, and that's what I did sort of to pass the time. And so I would write about things. There actually was a very special English teacher I had in my school in France who actually also really nourished and encouraged that side of me.
You said you never quite felt American and never quite felt French. Have you sorted that out?
No. If you can help me, please.
That also informs
For 100%.
the book and informs your life view. Is there a place you feel you're living here now?
Yeah.
In New York, is there a place where you feel more comfortable now?
It's so funny because I would like to live there as well, and I spend a lot of time there still every little while, but it took me a long time before I could actually go back there and enjoy it, and now I love it because it was difficult to even go there. So it's a really interesting sort of question. I like both places. I think I need both because I don't think I could do just one or the other.
You have a unique website. Tell me a little bit about it.
It's basically just the same kind of things as the objects that catch my eye or that I find pleasing, or arrangements or things that suggest this kind of sensibility that I wanted to share. And I just started it because it was a great idea. Someone said to me, you should do that. And I didn't really want to do writing because my writing sort of is all poured into books and future essays and work and things. And I wanted to share a similar spirit. And so it's kind of fun. You just get to see little things. And what I found that's really interesting is, how people connect through writing when they find a commonality. Mm-hmm. Even with the images, when someone sees that, like, oh, she likes, new wave French films, they feel a comfort and like a commonality, and they'll be like, oh, I love whatever.
Who doesn't love new
similar
wave French films?
Exactly. That's a bad example, but a cliche example, but you know what I mean.
So I wonder, what is the pitching process like, or the delivery process like when it comes to a book like this? Because it's not a long book, but you talk about it's unique because the asides you go into, the drawings in here. How do you pitch something like that and say, listen, I know this might sound weird, but this is what I want to do?
It's funny because actually the way it happened was not exactly that. It kind of all coalesced and happened. Luckily, I had people who had faith in me. And they knew what they were getting into, I mean.
They love the strange.
And they sort of, were up to trying things and seeing where it went. And for me, it all came together as I went along as well, because I didn't necessarily know if it was going to work. There was one point when I wanted to make every footnote connect through sentences. We let that go. That would have been about 10 more years in the making. But I think we managed a similar kind of, effect.
So moving forward then,
I'm working on my next, hopefully, book. I'm going to start it as independent, maybe sort of stories or pieces of writing, the same way this kind of evolved, I guess.
Nothing more traditional you want to stick with?
No, I think I will do maybe a traditional kind of. Actually, maybe not. Maybe you're right. Maybe I don't know how to do that.
I'm happy to help work this out.
Yeah, let's.
Right,
I don't know.
right now.
I have to figure that out.
Well, listen. I mean, you can clearly draw on the breadth of your experience overseas, and then coming back, going over. So it should be interesting. Stephanie LaCava, thank you.
Thank you
for coming in today.
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed the conversation.
Me too.
You've been watching Author Talk at CBS News. I'm Jeff Glor.